The T-34 was a Russian medium tank used by the Soviet Army for the entirety of World War II. During the invasion of Poland, the T-34 was still in production from 1937 to 1940. During this time, the only other German tanks were the T-70 and the T-50 series and the BT-7. These lightly armored, small caliber, light and medium tanks were not very effective against the modern, soon-to-becoming German army. The T-34, of course, was used for more of a multi-role purpose, to keep up with infantry but still be able to fight off armor. They did this very well with a 76.2 millimeter cannon, also known as the A-20. To protect the crew inside was sloped armor that was heat treated to a very high temperature. This would give superb protection against the German Army's 37mm cannons mounted on the Panzer III tanks and the 20mm autocannons mounted on the Panzer IIs. But with such high temperature treatment, the armor would turn brittle. Whenever it ricocheted around or absorbed it with enough force, the armor could tend to crack under the immense pressure. Now, the main selling point was the Christie's suspension, this high-tech, very usable, super reliable form of suspension that worked all the time. And one put it on the T-34, it worked very little amount of the time. It was a unreliable, high-weight, slow-moving suspension that only worked on lighter tanks. And so the T-34, with its marketable high speed of 54 kilometers, would only reach about 22 kilometers an hour because of the Christie suspension. Now, of course, some would say that the T-34 didn't really matter if it was slow or didn't work very well, if it just had such high produced numbers. And in total, there were 84,000 T-34s produced. But when one factory, and one factory alone, is producing more than 50% of those T-34s, you can expect to see some missing pieces and low quality assurance coming from that factory. And it doesn't help when you're barely paying, barely feeding your workers to build these tanks. And thus, some T-34s would be missing chairs, turret rings, gas tanks, optics, headlights, just to name a few. And with bad transmissions, and not being able to get out of third gear, and needing a hammer and a second person to get into fourth, the T-34 would soon succumb to its rightful place: a cool parade tank.